Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. Gain valuable insights by attending the podcast, then complete the assessment test to download your certificate. To do this, follow these simple steps. Click on the link in your description to access the session. Create a free account and attend the podcast. After the podcast, take the assessment test and download your certificate. It's easy, and it's free. We highly recommend checking out our subscription.
Wow. I mean, I love that. It's not about working, it's about working smarter, right? Not harder, right?
hmm
Like, like you rightly said, with using these tools, we talked about, approaching it with caution. So
hmm
what are the biggest mistakes that accountants are making when using AI for marketing?
mm Well, one thing is not understanding what it is, and also I think having a good policy around AI usage for yourself and for your firm. So privacy is going to always be an important piece of this. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with Jason Statz. He's a really
Yes.
smart thinker on this, and he has some good. I wish I had a link or a direct article that I could reference, but I know he's talked about how do you develop an AI policy for your firm. He also has some direction around how to make sure that I think if you're using the Teams version of ChatGPT, for example, it's not going to upload any of the information to its general data set. So that's going to protect privacy. So
Yes.
that's one level, is just you got to understand what this tool is, and making sure that you're protecting your client's data, because we're in a sensitive industry here, and that's really important to be aware of.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, is you have to remember what it's not. An AI tool is not a replacement for thinking. It cannot
Yes.
be relied on to be accurate about details and facts and things like that. It's very bad at math, and so if you're
Yes.
asking it certain questions.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of your favorite podcast we're trying to figure out. I'm your host, Saul, and today we're going to be talking about something that's becoming a game changer for CPAs: content marketing and thought leadership. But here's the twist, right? You don't need a marketing team to do it effectively, and you definitely don't need to outsource all that thinking. Joining me today is Matt Banker, a marketing strategist who specializes in helping CPAs grow their firms through digital marketing. We'll be breaking down how CPAs take control of their content strategy, how AI is transforming content creation, and most importantly, how to do it all without losing authenticity. Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt. Before we dive in, I just want to remind to all our listeners, if you have questions for Matt, drop them in the comments on LinkedIn or YouTube. If you're looking for CP credits, you can do that by joining us on MyCPE One at my-cpe.com/podcast. Plus, you can listen to this podcast on the go by downloading the MyCPE One mobile app, available on the App Store for iOS and the Play Store for Android. Now, Matt, before we get
Mhm.
into the weeds, I would like all our listeners to know, how did you get into this specific niche of just targeting CPAs? Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, it's not a traditional route by any means. I studied fine arts in
Huh?
college. I
Wow.
would not consider myself a really. I didn't start from a business perspective. I wasn't great at math. Now I know accounting isn't really mostly about math, but in college you assume that people who go into accounting and things like that are
Yeah.
probably numbers people. I'm not a numbers person. So I studied fine arts. I studied weird installation sculpture and oil painting and things like that.
Wow.
And I found myself teaching and working as a youth director for a while. And what I discovered, though, was all of my roles really came back to I would focus a lot on communication, and that was one of the things that really fascinated me. And so whatever organization I was in, I was always attracted to how are we communicating both internally and externally. And with an art background, that's not too far off from marketing, and having a
Yes.
sense of design and things like that are very important in this space. So, I ended up teaching myself how to design websites, and then after a while, I found myself in a copywriting program, and that's kind of where things developed. So I had a generalist marketing agency for a bit, and then at some point we realized, most of my really good clients were like accounting firms and some financial advisors and things like that. And my last name is Banker. So it just sort of makes sense that I should, even though I'm not a numbers person, that I should go into something, in the financial space. And then, we really niched down about 3 years ago into marketing for accounting firms. And that's really where I spend most of my time thinking and working on it. And we work with, a couple dozen accounting firms on their marketing. And I probably worked with, I don't know, 60 or 70 just in some sort of consultative way over the past few years.
Yeah, no, I completely, and I think what you've identified is something that has been a consistent issue that I see. Like, if you were to ask accounting firms, CPAs, financial advisors, you ask them for their advice on matters related to compliance. Like if you ask for the plans and everything, whoa, they can talk those things out like as if like they know those things like the back of the hand. But then there's the marketing front, because everything is digital today.
Yeah.
Gone are the days wherein you could, have those flyers on a very seat on a bulletin board or something, and then you're getting a hold of them, or maybe picking up the phone directory and then calling those people. No, those are not the days anymore. Now it's all
No.
digital, and you have a space and everything. But that's the thing. Let's start with the big question, like you rightly said. Why do most accounting firms struggle with marketing and content creation?
Well, the reason they struggle with it is actually the exact reason why they're good clients for me. It's because they're not very good at it. Most accounting firm owners, they don't think of themselves as great writers or designers. They went into a career that was, it's pragmatic, it's straightforward, everything, it's logical, but creativity isn't really a key component for most accounting. Whenever we hear about creative accounting, that's usually a bad thing, right? We don't want to get creative with any of this stuff, right? And so the reason that makes them good clients for me is that they recognize that that's not their strong suit, right? And so they look for a guide or an expert who can complement their skill set. And that's I think actually why it's been such a successful area, is that I think I have a more logical brain in the way that I think about things, but I bring that creativity and a little bit of that outside of the box thinking that is really important for marketing, but is maybe not overly represented among accounting type people in the world. So the reason it's hard for them is that they're not very good at it. And the other reason is that they're not practiced. So I do believe anyone who devotes time and energy to something can learn best practices around marketing and can really improve their skills in all of these things, but they're not practiced. And we're all bad at things when we start doing them, the first time and from scratch. But I am here really today to talk about how do you go from zero to be able to create good content, because I also believe that subject matter experts, someone who knows really what they're talking about, should be the one responsible for the content. And so in a weird way, these days, and we're going to get into it, I'm sure, with ChatGPT and AI tools, I've kind of come to the conclusion that part of my job now is to work myself out of a job in certain areas. We don't write a lot of content for accounting firms anymore, mostly because we believe that it's better content for firm owners or CPAs, people who know what they're talking about, to be learning how to do that on their own rather than paying a marketing agency. It's very expensive to hire me and my team to write content for you. We'd rather teach you and help you and coach you learn how to do that kind of stuff on your own.
It kind of goes like a feed a man a fish every day. Rather than that, you teach the person how to fish, and you'll never be hungry anymore. But and you rightly said, I mean, like it's the creativity is not probably that angle, but to take that control of that content ownership, because whenever I talk to anybody and I'm telling them that all right, you gotta put this on the internet, and then they think, oh, okay, so what do I need to do? I need to just probably create a generic blog and just probably put my
Mhm.
logo there, and that works. But no, that's just not enough, right? Because it's not a sales pitch. It has to be
No.
real, it has to be insightful, and the content has to really hit your target audience in the right manner. You just
Yeah.
can't have like something like something very generic.
No, the thing is, the thing that is the most important skill or thing to develop in yourself if you're going to use content marketing thought leadership is that you have to develop a point of view. And you can't,
Right.
that's the other thing, is you can't outsource that to me as a marketer or to a
Yes.
copywriter, and you can't outsource that to AI. We're in this space right now where AI has made it so easy to just click a button basically and generate 2,000 words. You can say, please SEO optimize this. You can ask it to do research. You can even ask AI, like, what are people searching for? But the reality is, it's so easy for you. It's so easy for everyone else. It's so easy for these content farms, for people who don't have a strong point of view, to just generate, all kinds of junk basically. And it's filling up the internet. And so
Yeah.
because it's easier than ever, we're also getting more worse content than ever before. And so while I believe this is still an important part of the marketing ecosystem for just about every business, especially for accounting firms, the most important thing is that you need to develop an actual point of view. And this may sound contradictory compared, when in context of what I'm going to tell you, but there's this thought, or this quote, that writing is thinking. And so
Uh-huh.
my advice to accounting firm owners is, the purpose of writing is not just to have stuff on your website. Like, that is a low priority. The purpose of writing, first of all, is to use it as a way to teach yourself how to communicate ideas more clearly, how to develop a clear point of view. Basically, you're writing, you're going through the process of the hard work to get to a point that you have something worthwhile to actually say that people will respond to, because anybody can click the ChatGPT button and
Yeah.
generate a whole bunch of content. And so that's not what we're talking about today. It's not that
Yeah.
easy, but it also, like, because of these tools, it's not so hard anymore either. So it's
Yeah.
it's a balance of both.
Yeah, it is a balance. It's a sweet balance. But I mean, AI is a great assistant. I always
Mhm,
believe that it's a great assistant, but you should always remember that it's not a replacement of your expertise, right?
mhm,
There's CPAs, I mean, or these accounting professionals who I'm seeing who win in the content marketing space are the ones who
mhm,
stay hands on, and they're using
mhm.
AI as a tool to enhance their voice, not really like
Yeah.
completely replace their expertise.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
writing is, it's a skill that you develop over time, but that's the great thing about these AI tools, is that the hard part is no longer like sitting and typing out
yeah,
words, but you got to think of yourself almost more as an editor today rather than
yes,
a writer, because you can use this as a tool to generate the content, but your job is still to validate it and to make sure that it is making interesting and also true points. Like, both of those
yes.
things, you cannot rely on AI to be, consistent in those areas.
Well, we're certainly going to be touching on that point where you rightly said it has to
Mhm.
be true, because one is that the information going out has to be correct, and then there's also
Mhm.
the ethical element of it. You gotta
Mhm.
take care of that as well. We'll come to that. We'll
Yeah.
come to that
Yeah.
shortly, but but let's first talk about AI, because
Yeah.
everybody has heard of it, but like for somebody who has been coaching CPAs to help to themselves, what are some of the best AI tools that you would recommend CPAs should be using to help them with their content creation?
Yeah, generally the two that I point people to, and these are the ones that I have the most experience with myself. Everybody's heard of ChatGPT. I think that's the most obvious one. Specifically with ChatGPT, one of the things that I have been doing lately, and I encourage firm owners to do, you have to be a little bit careful about making sure that you're not uploading sensitive client data, But
Yes.
you can create a custom GPT that has information and some of your own thoughts. And so one of the ways that I use chat, I have a custom GPT. We call it Matt GPT because my name is Matt.
Whoa.
And what I've done is I've uploaded a whole bunch of transcripts of podcasts that I've been on, articles that I've written, and also strategy
Yeah.
calls that I've had with my clients. Now we scrub
Nice.
them so it doesn't have specific information about the firms that I'm working with, but I've uploaded a lot of my own ideas and thinking to it, and then I use that as a tool to kind of go back and forth. And it's really not too hard to build that out if you're using Fathom or Otter or one of these things to record your client meetings. You may already have a whole bunch of information or transcripts basically that are really helpful, and so you can build out this kind of custom GPT that has a lot of your own ideas already in there, and so you can use that to help sound more like you and to take ideas from yourself. So that's the main one that I use. And if you're going to just choose one AI tool, ChatGPT, I think right now is a really good one. The other one that I really like is Claude by Anthropic.
Yes.
And it's every month these different models are coming out with new ones. For a while, I really felt like Claude had a more natural tone in the way that it wrote and spoke, and so I did enjoy that. It's also better, I guess, with coding if you decide you want to get into a little bit more of the technical things. If you're already using Claude for other things and you want to use it for writing as well, it's very much a pretty good tool for that.
Do you want to earn CPE credit? Take this course of MyCPE ONE to earn free credit. Click the link in the description to get started.
Wow. I mean, I love that. It's not about working. It's about working smarter, right? Not harder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like like you rightly said, with using these tools, we talked about approaching it with caution. So, what are the biggest mistakes that accountants are making when using AI for marketing?
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing is not understanding what it is, and also I think having a good policy around AI usage for yourself and for your firm. So privacy is going to always be an important piece of this, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with Jason Statz. He's a really smart thinker on this, and he has some good. I wish I had a link or a direct article that I could reference, but I know he's talked about how do you develop an AI policy for your firm. He also has some direction around how to make sure that, I think if you're using the Teams version of ChatGPT, for example, it's not going to upload any of the information to its general data set. So that's going to protect privacy. So that's one level, is just, you got to understand what this tool is, and making sure that you're protecting your client's data, because we're in a sensitive industry here, and that's really important to be aware of. The other thing, though, is you have to remember what it's not. An AI tool is not a replacement for thinking. It cannot be relied on to be accurate about details and facts and things like that. It's very bad at math, and so if you're asking it certain questions, now these things might change over time depending on when you're listening to this podcast. Some of this might be outdated, but never think of it as an outsource. You can think of it as, what I've heard is like an entry level, like junior intern, right? They can go out and they can generate, they can do some research, they can find some things together, but you're never going to send, you're not going to click print or publish, after having a sophomore in college, write an article for your accounting firm, right? So that's how you should think about ChatGPT. It's and the other thing, I guess the last thing that I should say is, you might not be a great writer, or you might not think about yourself as a great writer. And so what ChatGPT comes up with out of the box might seem quite impressive. But we've gotten to the point, I think, that people can really intuit whether this was just directly from an AI bot or not. And so I think you need to be thinking about clarity and tone and voice and all of these things. You need to direct it more. Like the out of the box content that these AI tools are generating, it's kind of boring, it's kind of bland, and it's kind of recognizable these days. And I see a lot
Yes.
of people, if they feel like this was written by an AI tool, even if it's good information, I think a lot of us just like turn off our brains and stop paying attention. And so don't, it might be a better writer than you out of the box,
Yeah.
but it's not a great writer in the end.
Mhm.
It is a good, assistant, but it's back to you. And that's why I would say go back to this idea that writing is thinking, and as you're going to use these tools, you do still need to spend a little bit of time carefully parsing through whatever it's generating, and using it like a tool, not as like an outsourced writer on your behalf.
Yeah. Would you also believe that, all this content that this assistant of yours or this intern would prepare and bring it to you, to make it more non-AI, I would say,
Mm,
to probably, to include your personal touch, you
yeah.
know, that flavor of yours.
Well, the funny thing with AI is that, if you just add a prompt and ask it to write some things, it'll generate. It feels like it's a pretty similar phrasing. It has certain words that it likes to use, but you can ask it to rewrite it again.
Yeah.
I very often now I'm a big believer that clear is better than clever. Like clarity of thinking is so important, and don't use a $2 word when a 2-cent word is gonna work well enough. And so I often will ask ChatGPT to rewrite content at like an 8th grade reading level, is a pretty
Whoa.
good standard. And so it you might think, oh, that's going to dumb it down for my clients, but the reality is, there's this thing called a curse of knowledge, where like
Mhm.
your level of expertise is at like a level 10. And so
Yeah.
you're thinking like, hey, I'm gonna explain this to regular people, and so I'm gonna drop it from a level 10 down to like a level 8. That's not
Mhm.
low enough, and that's not because it's not because your audience is stupid. It's
No.
because they're busy. They don't have time to like burn the calories in their brain to understand when you're writing at a higher level. And so you got to dumb it down all the way to like a level 2, and you can still be true, you can still be accurate, but you can be clear, and that's going to be better writing. And you can use these tools to like re-edit themselves. You can use it to edit yourself. You could upload something that you did write by hand and say, hey, can you take this, preserve as much as you can, but simplify the language, get it down to like an 8th grade reading level. That kind of stuff can be a really powerful way to use these tools.
Wow. I mean, that's a very beautiful perspective that you just brought forward. You know, like you don't want to go from 10 to 8 because you're explaining you probably want to go a lot, and
Mhm.
very, very fascinating approach. I'm
Yeah,
mind blown. And
there's
with that,
Mhm.
with that level, like, I guess, I've seen that in a lot of people, what they've started doing is they started to involve their own personal experiences, like, or something that happened with them, like this happened to
Mhm.
me, and including that in the strategy, because that kind of gives that personal flavor,
Mm.
that this is something very unique to this gentleman. Like, there's this
Yeah.
gentleman that I follow on LinkedIn. I mean, and he's also on YouTube and everything. His name is Joshua Jensen, but he's better known as JJ the CPA. And
Mhm.
he's got that, he's created a brand for himself, or I don't know, that uniqueness about him.
Mm.
Like, whenever I see in
Yeah.
all his videos, he's either having a 3-piece suit and he's got a cigar and he's talking, he's got slick hairstyle, or maybe, and he's a huge fan of Captain America, or maybe he's dressing
Mm.
up and he's got those things, and it's created that flavor from him. And then he's actually talking
Mm.
about what happened to him, like, this is what happened to me, or this is what I saw. And he's able to connect it to the thing that he wants to say. And
Mm.
I've been following him all the way since the pandemic, and
Mhm.
he's created a brand for himself. I think he's got like, I think 250 plus followers, 50K followers or something like that on YouTube. But
Mhm.
that personal touch, it comes in very, you got to use it. I'm pretty certain he uses AI too now, but
Yeah.
you got to keep that. But and
Well,
and yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know if this is a bit of a rabbit trail, but when you're thinking about content, you have to think about where this is going to go. And
Yes.
the past 20 years, I would say, have been the AI or the SEO age of the internet, right? Like
Yes.
that was
Yes.
Google search. This was the big deal. And the thing with the way these tools have evolved is I'm a little skeptical. I think that AI may kind of kill Google search as a marketing, SEO as a marketing thing, because it's so easy. There's so much more junk out there. It's easy to generate content. Google and these other search engines are using AI to answer questions, so people aren't clicking through
Yes.
to your articles anymore. And so the more logical place to be investing your time is social media. Now, social
Yeah.
media is going to change as well, but as you're creating content, whether that's video or even writing content, if you're going to use it on social media, the thing that's important to remember is that social media is still social. People want to connect to people. They don't want to
Yes.
connect to your company page. They don't want to connect to like a faceless, uninteresting, business that is generating content. They want to connect to a person. And this
Yeah.
is one of the biggest hurdles with people in the accounting industry to get over, is
Yes.
that you have a valuable point of view, and unfortunately maybe you have to probably become the face of
Yes.
the content. So if there's one thing that I'm going to tell you that's really bad news, that is hard, is that if you go down the content route, you can't hide behind your business. You still have to be a person. Now, you don't
Yes.
have to be super slick or like overly professional. People
Yeah.
actually really like a little bit of rawness, a little bit of like,
Yes.
hey, this is a real person behind here. You can definitely improve your presenting skills and how you show up on camera if video is part
Yeah.
of it, but it's got to be a person. You got to be the person behind it. And I work with a lot of firms. Some of them are quite large, and the
Mhm.
firm owner, they don't want to do stuff
Yeah.
anymore, right? They want
Yeah.
their
Why is
team.
that?
They want to hire,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
Go ahead.
why is that? I mean, like, I see that, they avoid the video. Is it,
Yeah.
why is that?
Well, I mean, one answer might be they'd rather be golfing. Another answer might be that again, accounting, you probably feel comfortable in spreadsheets and behind the screen, but you don't like being out in front or on stage. It's just there are personality types that are overrepresented, I think, in the accounting space. So I get that you're introverted and you're shy and you don't want to be on camera, but there's a lot of introverted, shy people. Like a lot of the famous actors that are actually quite
yeah.
shy in person.
Yes.
They're good on screen, but they don't like being
Yeah.
too exposed in real life. But the thing is, people connect with people. So this content, there's a personal brand aspect to it. You can't outsource that to someone you hire, because if they
Yeah.
build an audience creating great content for you, and then they decide to go out on their own or get hired away by someone else, they're going to bring that audience with them. It's not going to stay with your firm. And so,
Yes.
a partner or an owner, those are the best people to be the face of the company. And you do usually, to make content work, there usually has to be some sort of face. Now, my argument, or how I would approach it, is that as your firm grows, or if that's you, you want to be moving from one-to-one conversations into one-to-many conversations.
One too many.
So
Yeah.
rather than being an advisor who meets with individual clients throughout the week, this is why you start moving into content and marketing, so that you're able to create it once and now distribute it to all of your clients and to a broader audience beyond that. That is the direction that you do want to actually be going, so that you're leveraging the limited time that you have for, the greatest possible, connection points with it.
Yeah. And, I mean, like, you must have had this conversation with a lot of people, because you must have told them that, you should be on video. And they must have, no, and they must have given you all the reasons: golfing, wolfing, whatever it is, right? But then,
Yep.
like, if at all there was a tip to get started, how do you
Mm.
get started? Like, should they just
Yeah.
turn off the phone and just get going, or?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things you need. So actually, one of the first things that I would say to just about every accounting firm is you should have a video corner in your office. You should have something that's
Okay.
already set up. You need
Mm-hmm.
good lighting. That can be as simple as putting in front of a window so you're getting natural light right on your face. You don't want a
Yeah.
window behind you because that like
Yeah.
the blacks
It
out
makes you,
the
yeah, it
video. It
blacks
looks
out.
it looks
Yeah.
bad. So get good lighting. An iPhone, a smartphone is great. Just get a little
Mm-hmm.
stand. The cameras on those things, especially the rear facing ones, are actually very good. So you can use
Yeah.
that to record. You can buy, a $20 or $40 little mic that clips to your shirt that's going to give you really good audio. So the three components are lighting, camera, and audio. Those are the three things that are really important for just the actual capturing of the video. It's not
Yep.
it's not rocket science. I'm a big believer that you have to meet a threshold of professionalism,
Yeah.
at which point it's not distracting anymore. But like you don't
Yes.
have to have a $5,000 podcasting video room in order to do effective content. You just need
Yeah.
you need to meet that threshold. You can do it for less than $200. You're going to be totally fine with that.
Yeah.
And then you have to have something to say. So now
Yes.
that is the harder part. But
It is.
in terms of the technical side, that's where you
Yeah.
start. And
Yeah.
if you're going to use video, here's one more tool that I'll mention that I didn't mention earlier. There's two routes that I would go if you're going with video. One, there's a tool called Descript that is very
Okay.
good. It's a video editing software where essentially it generates a transcript of whatever you say into the camera, and it generates like a Word document. And then all
Nice.
you have to do to edit the video is delete the sentences, and it's just going to cut that out of the
Whoa.
video. Or you can add, it's good enough that you can even like change a word here and there. If you said the wrong thing, you can delete it,
Yeah.
and it does a pretty good job. So you don't have to know how to like edit a video. You just know how to edit a word process, a text process document or whatever, and you can edit video. It's pretty straightforward, very, very cool, very fun. So
Yep.
if you want to edit yourself, that's a way to go. And then there's also services. There's one we recommend often called VidChops. That it's a team. I think they might be based in the Philippines or something, and they'll edit videos for you. So develop a relationship with a team. I think it's, I don't know, $400 a month, something like that, and you get 4 or 5 videos per month, which is going to be plenty for 90% of the firms that we work with. So whether
Yeah.
it's yourself or you're using a team, there's a couple different options.
Access latest and trending CPE courses with my CPE One Unlimited Access subscription. Subscribe now.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, when you mentioned that, I think there's this tool that I heard, Opus AI. It kind of like takes your video and then analyzes and then breaks it down into small bits and gives us beautiful captions and everything that are
Yep.
in different colors and everything. So
that you
it
can
does
use
all
on
this.
social media.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, this is why I'm like working myself out of my job in a sense, is that a lot of times that's what you use these tools, and you can do in 20 minutes what used to take a team a week to put this stuff together. And if we're operating under this idea that you have to meet a threshold of professionalism, most of these tools can get you to that threshold. It's not
Yep.
going to be the videos that Disney or Capital One or one of these big companies is putting out on their social media, but it's going to be good enough for the audience and for the people that you're trying to connect with.
Yep. Start slow, start small, but start. That's
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah. But and then when we talk about content, there are various forms of content, right? There's video, there's written, there's so many things that are happening on social media. Even images are presented in a different way and all that. So, if we were to talk about the types of content that are actually working for accountants, what are the best formats that are most working for them?
Yeah. Well, the best I know this is not maybe exactly the way you asked the question, but the best content is narrow content.
Okay.
So having a clear point of view and audience that you're speaking to is going to do much better. You might think like, oh, I want to create something that is applicable to all of my clients or to anyone that needs accounting. It's very hard for that content to break through. You're better off picking a niche or a lane where you have a lot of knowledge and doing more narrow, more niche, more specific content around that. And so for me, once I decided to do marketing for accounting firms, that's when my content started to really generate actual interest and eventually clients. That's not to say you have to choose an industry, but find a smaller audience of people that you're talking to, not very broad. So you can also, you could find a Facebook group of people who have a similar challenge or something. You could be on LinkedIn and creating content. So I wouldn't say that there is one type of content that works better. I am a big fan today in 2025 of starting with video, though, because with video, if you start with video, you can create all the other types of content. You can reformat it if you've got that to start, because it's so easy to generate a transcript these days, which can turn into an article and social media posts and little clips for different social media platforms and long form for YouTube. But if you start with, little social media posts and you're like, oh, I got to create a video to go with this, 3-sentence social media post, now you're moving the wrong direction. You're not able to like repurpose and use it. So if you start with video, it's always easy to repurpose it down into blog posts, emails, other social media posts, short clips, long clips, all of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And all this has to happen, but then there's also, you get the courage to develop a video. You got this not so expensive equipment. You got all that ready. You got your spot, good lighting, you got your video, you got your audio, everything, and then you're creating it. But then it's all about a structured approach, right? You got to have a content strategy approach in place, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't just keep on doing like randomly. There has to be like a content strategy in place. So so could you like give an idea of like what would be like an ideal content strategy, or how many times should we be doing it? Should you be doing it every day, or how does it work?
Well, my answer to how often is consistent is better. Consistency is good. And so whatever you can do is it's going to be a good cadence. Once a week, start if you start with once a month recording a video, that's great. If you can get to once a week, that's even better. You don't even have to, you could batch create, you could create a bunch of videos at once and then, send them out over time. But what you don't want to do in most cases is go through kind of a manic phase where you create 30 videos or 10 videos and you publish them online, and then you go 6 months with nothing, and then you come back. It's not going to get you a lot of traction with an audience. So that's, in terms of consistency, pick a steady cadence of releasing that, and try to go like the same day every week if you can. That's going to be better. You get into a habit, all of that is going to be good. In terms of like an editorial calendar or a content strategy, this is actually one of the areas where we still do a lot of work. So my belief has been that most firm owned, I would love to put a firm owner or a partner or a CPA, if you're kind of a solo firm, love to put you more in the driver's seat of being the face and being the one who knows what they're talking about. And so the content is coming from your brain. But you're not a marketer, and a lot of times our intuition about what people want to hear is bad, to be honest. And so, one of the things sometimes I tell my clients is, my job is to be the dumb person here who doesn't know what you're talking about. And the business owner, kind of the ignorant business owner or individual, if you're talking more about, tax and individuals, I'm the one here who's the person who doesn't know what you know. And so I can help them shape and craft, like, what is the type of content that I actually care about. And for example, I don't want to know, the 5 most important tax loopholes that I should be taking advantage of next year. I want my tax pro to know that information, and I want to trust that they're going to be like knowing about that on my behalf. What I do want to know is actually things about like, what does it cost to get my taxes done? What should my, like, what are the benchmarks for a company in my industry that I should be paying attention to? What are the KPIs, for this, for my labor costs, or, those kinds of detail things are really helpful. What you want to do is just show that you really have a deep knowledge and understanding of what it is that their business is dealing with, and then you're creating content around those things. But you have to have a deeper understanding of what is actually the problem within a business. I have a book here, actually. Sorry, I'm just like telling everybody. There's a book called They Ask You Answer. Marcus Sheridan is the name, is the author. It's a great book. I have a couple caveats. It was written in 20, I don't remember what year, 2018, 19, before ChatGPT and AI. Yeah. And so I think there's some things that are a little, like, the internet changes, right? So some of the concepts more around the technical side is a little outdated at this point. But essentially, I think that the idea is people have questions, and you're going to get engagement when you answer the questions that people actually have. And that's always going to be true. The channels might change, but the idea of answer the questions that people have is going to be good. And they have kind of 5 main types of content that they'll recommend. A big one is people are always wondering about cost and pricing. So especially if you work in B2B, they always want to know about the money side of things. And so if you can answer those sorts of questions, that's going to be really good content. They also like to know, like reviews and curated lists of, like, what should I be using. So if you work with a lot of contractors, tradespeople, find out what are the best softwares for those companies for their project management, or quoting tools and things like that, and you can make recommendations based on how this is going to impact the bookkeeping, or that kind of stuff. So you're being a helpful guide. About what they're talking about. Maybe this is a helpful way to think about it. When it comes to content, if you were a wedding photographer, you need to be talking a lot about weddings and a little bit about photography, right?
Yes.
So your audience cares about a wedding, and so they're going to follow you because you know about weddings. And then you're going to be like, oh, by the way, I do the photography, and they're going to hire you. But if you talk about photography, you're going to get a lot of people following you who are photographers. They're not going to hire you, right? Yeah. And so you got to think of, like, what is it that my audience actually cares about? So if you're a tax advisor for real estate investors, you're going to talk a lot about real estate and the industry there, and a little bit about taxes, because they're going to hire you to fix the taxes. They're going to pay attention to you because you know about real estate and you've proven that you have a depth of knowledge here. So if you're a business advisor, accounting firm, bookkeeper, again, you're talking mostly about business and a little bit about bookkeeping and the tax side of things.
Well, that's the basic definition of thought leadership. Thank you for bringing that out. Thank you. Now, when people do all these things, I think there is one more bit that they miss out, that they probably just don't know that there is a way through which they can also track if this is working or this is not working, right? They because I think that's something that they forget, that if you're putting something on LinkedIn, let's say, or anywhere, or maybe somewhere, and then you're tracking it, there's a way to track it, but they just don't know that how to track it. So how can they measure what's working? Are there some tools already out there?
Yeah. Well, it's gonna depend a little bit on the channel.
Yes.
I will tell people, if you're creating content, you actually go through 3 phases of content and what you should be tracking. So phase 1 is the production phase. And so the things you should be tracking are just about, did we hit publish at the same day, on the same day for like 3 months in a row? Right? Are you able to actually do the work to create and publish the content? When you're getting started, you should have very, very low expectations for how this is going to impact your business. It's like a steam engine that you build up speed over time. It's not like a light switch. And so you start posting on LinkedIn, no one's going to like it, no one's going to comment, no one's going to interact with it. that's not the point. If you're in production phase, the point is, can we do this consistently over time
Consistently.
and get it
Yep.
done? So that's phase one. Phase two is what I call signals. And what you're going to want to
Okay.
pay attention to in the signals phase is it's qualitative, it's not quantitative. You're looking
Right.
for people who say, wow, that was really helpful. Like you might get
Yeah.
one comment on a
Yeah.
piece of content, or someone sends you an email and responds to it. You're just looking for what is the type of stuff that I'm talking about that seems to resonate with a couple people here or there, here. Because again, you're trying to dial in what types of content is going to work in the long run, because you're still testing, you're figuring out your own
Yes.
voice, you're learning,
Yeah.
you're trying to decipher what is it that's working. And again, the number of signals that you're getting might be quite low at this point.
Yes.
You might still be
Yes.
discouraged by the lack of
Yeah.
reach that you're getting, but
Yeah.
that's going to help you create better content over time. You're going to adapt,
Yeah.
you're going to evolve, all of that. The third phase is when you actually start looking at engagement type
Yeah.
content. And so this is when you start using the usual tools. Now, and again, it's important to realize where you're at, because let's say you use LinkedIn.
Yeah.
If you just pay attention to how many people are liking, commenting, viewing your content, you're gonna get misled, because you're gonna realize, hey, when we posted that it was so-and-so's birthday the other day, it got a whole
Yeah.
bunch of interaction, from their
Yeah.
friends and people that they know, but that's not going to do anything for your business. There's
Yeah.
certain content. We all know that social media, you can be really controversial and get a lot of engagement, but that doesn't mean
Yes.
it's going to lead to business. You're trying to connect with a couple people, really resonates strongly with a few people to the degree that they trust you and hire you. It's not just about what can we get the most. So that's why you go through these phases. Now, once you've dialed in your content, you have a good idea from that signals phase of what people care about and like. Now you try to generate more of that content, and you can use the analytics tools that are built in to LinkedIn, or you can look at your SEO. I guess again, I'm a little down on SEO these days. You can look at view metrics, using your. I would start with whatever analytics are built into the platform that you're focused on, whether that's YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook. But I would always approach those with a little bit of skepticism, understanding what's the business model of the platform that you're on, and does it align fully with what you're trying to accomplish. So paying attention to those metrics is important. But at the end of the day, what we're moving towards is what's the thing that generates sales, because this is a marketing motion. This isn't clicks and views and likes. Those are kind of vanity metrics at the end of the day. If you only if 10 people see your content and one of them hires you, that's way better than 1,000 people seeing your content and it not turning into a sale, right? So we're okay with low volume if it's effective in the long run. And so at the end of the day, I do say, look for the stuff that is resonating very strongly with your ideal client, rather than the stuff that is resonating kind of broadly but weakly with a large subset of people.
Nice.
That's not maybe the most helpful answer, because analytics are hard, to be honest. Attribution these days is very difficult. And so I tend to, here's a really practical tip. Rather than spending months and hours trying to perfect your analytics and attribution tracking, I would put an open-ended question, make it required, but put an open-ended question on your contact form that just says, how did you hear about us? Because if you can find out that, hey, I heard you on the MYCPE ONE podcast, that's going to be a helpful data point. It's the thing that they say mattered to them. Maybe they saw you on LinkedIn and they saw you at a conference and they heard you on a podcast. But if the podcast was the one that got them to call, then now you know the most important piece of that information. And it's easy to do. Again, required, open-ended. Don't give them a list of places, because it over indexes. People get, if it's required and there's a list, they'll just click the top one. Or they'll say Google, and you don't know, was that a paid ad or was it organic search or from a map? So ask them to tell you, what they use. Again, it's It's not going to be huge volume. It's qualitative, not quantitative. But
Yes.
I actually think that that's one of the most helpful ways to track.
Well, but I like the way you put it. I still love the way you put it, especially the three phases. You focus on the production,
Mm-hmm.
which focuses on the consistency, because I guess that was the very
Mm-hmm.
first thing you told, that
Yep.
you got to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be random. So that production, then the
Signals.
reactions, the signals,
Yeah.
the reactions, the signals, that's where you want to see, and then capitalize on that. And then when you're doing it consistently, keeping track of the signals, and then you reach to that engagement phase where you actually look into
Mm-hmm.
this, while also being cautious, like you rightly said. What is the main purpose for that platform to
Mm-hmm.
give it its matrices and everything? And at the end
Yeah.
of the day, like you rightly said, all
Mm-hmm.
the marketing has to lead to a sale. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the main thing. You,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it all drives to. So you got to have that thing in place. I mean, this was
Yeah.
really, really insightful. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Matt, for sharing that. Now,
I'm sure it's like drinking from a fire hose. There's so much to say and talk about here. And so,
yeah,
I hope everyone
yeah,
who's listening, take your time, slow down and take notes, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. Slow down. Just like, your content strategy, start
Mhm.
slow, start small, but just start and then just be consistent, and you know slowly but surely you tend to get visible and creditable and valuable, and then it just keeps on growing.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, Matt, love that. But before I let you go,
Mhm.
where can the listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
Yeah. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so Matt Banker. You can find me. There's like a pink and purple background on my headshot, which is the brand colors. You
Yes.
can find us at, it's very simple to remember, marketingforaccountingfirms.com.
Whoa.
And the name of my company is Benchmark Growth Marketing, but marketingforaccountingfirms.com is the domain, the URL. That's the easy one to remember. We do marketing services. We do a lot of web design and things like that. We also have I have a marketing mastermind group that I run. So
Nice.
like I said, we're doing a lot more coaching and teaching people these days. And so you can find information about that at the website. That's one of the
Mhm.
big things that we do these days.
Wow, is there like a community, the coaching that you do? Is it like a
Yeah.
community on
So
on Slack or something?
yeah, it depends on when people are listening to this. So it's March. We're recording March of 2025. This
Yeah.
year, the last couple of years, we've run it kind of as a course of sort. I have a
Hmm.
teaching background,
Yeah.
and in June we're going to relaunch though more as a community. So it's going to
Nice.
be a little bit more kind of office hours, learning from each other in this space, and I'll be participating more to give advice. And we're working on a video course of a lot of our teachings, so that we don't do the coursework in the mastermind. We do the Q&A and the
Yes.
feedback and all of that, and then people can watch the video course and work through it in their own pace.
Radical. Well, this is great. Matt, I wish you all the best for those video
Yeah.
calls, and when that community is out, I'm sure it will be really helpful to a lot of people. That's another channel that a lot of people are resonating to a lot these days,
Mhm.
communities. So
Yeah.
best of luck with that.
Yeah.
And with that, I thank you, Matt. Thank you so much for being a guest to this podcast and sharing those valuable bits of information. I'm sure our
Yeah.
listeners love this. So thank you once
It's
again.
a
And
great conversation.
yeah, absolutely. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, take care and keep innovating in everything that you do. Cheers.
Access latest and trending CPE courses with my CPE One Unlimited Access subscription. Subscribe now.